welcome everybody again. I know I've said welcome 100 times, but welcome, welcome, welcome again. Today we're going to be talking about growth-driven design with TechSoup website services. And I asked you in the chat if you've heard of Tap Network because you are in for a treat. These people are experts, and this is one of my favorite groups to do webinars. So you might want to take notes, but I don't know if you need to take notes. It's going to be a video replay. So I'm going to show you how you can engage on the next slide. We would love if you put your questions in the Q&A sections. I know you're going to put your questions in the chat, and that's totally fine too. But the Q&A will help us, gather them and give them at the end. This is being recorded, and you're going to get the slides and the video replay probably later today or tomorrow. If you need the closed caption, just tap on the CC button. I just have one quick announcement. It's going to be a survey that's going to pop up. It'll take you 2 minutes because it's just 2 simple questions. We want to know what more you want to know about Tap Network after you hear this. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa and Jason. You guys are in for a treat. Have a great webinar.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Pitts, and we are here to talk through growth-driven design. Today, we're going to start off with a quick introduction to Tap Network. We'll then move into the bulk of our presentation, which is an overview of growth-driven design for nonprofit websites. And then we will move on to a hands-on workshop in which we hope all of you will participate and follow along as we go. Towards the end, we'll have a chance for you to live participate and get feedback on your website's homepage for a few of you that are randomly selected. And then we will talk a little bit about our services and leave some time for Q&A at the end. So, quick introductions. As I said, my name is Melissa Pitts. I am the Director of Client Services for Tap Network. In addition to serving as an account manager for many of the nonprofit organizations that we work with, I also manage our client experience and make sure that we are providing services that support our nonprofit clients with the services that we're able to provide, but also provide you with education to be able to empower you to make creative decisions and grow your marketing and technology with your organization. And I am joined by my colleague, Jason Spangler, who is our Director of Business Development. He is going to be popping in the chat, and he'll also jump back in when we move to our workshop to help us walk through that.
Good afternoon.
Great. All right. So a little bit about TAP. We are a mission-driven digital transformation agency. We, as I mentioned previously, we work primarily with nonprofit organizations, small businesses, government agencies. We are constantly looking for ways to help your organizations like you scale and grow with marketing tools and technology. Just a sample of some of the services that we offer through our partnership with TechSoup. You can see there's a full range of marketing and technology services here, ranging everything from strategy and creative through to custom technology development, social media, inbound marketing, CRM implementation, and what we're going to talk about today, which is website development. So to get us started off on that topic, we're going to go ahead and take a quick poll, and you can even just drop your answer in the chat. We want to get an idea, what's the status of your organization's website? Send through A if you do not have a website and you're looking to make one for the first time. Send through B if you have a website, but you want to redesign it or redevelop it in the next year. C if you're happy with your site but would like to make some updates. And D if you're perfectly happy with your website exactly as it is right now. Give everyone a second to send those through. All right, I'm seeing a lot of B's and C's, which is a perfect group for us to review this topic today. We're hoping that you'll be able to leave this session with a better understanding of what some of those improvements might be and where you might be able to make some improvements to your site. I see a couple of D's there too, so I'm glad there are some people that are happy with their site. That's great. All right. So why are nonprofit websites important? For nonprofits, especially, we're, as you all know, living in a virtual world, and a lot of times, especially in the world of nonprofits, trying to reach very diverse target audiences, depending on who you serve, who supports your organization, and the mission that you are pursuing. So this website is going to be your virtual storefront in the absence of, and you may have a physical location as well, but your virtual storefront is going to be something that you can model and craft to accommodate all of your different audiences. So, the hope is with your website that you can enhance engagement. If your organization is one that focuses on donations and or recruiting volunteers, the hope is that your website can be a hub for that piece, or at least the jumping off point for people to understand what opportunities exist for engaging as a donor or a volunteer. It can be an educational tool, who your organization is, who you serve, what accomplishments you've had or impact that you've had on your community. Um, like I said earlier, it is your kind of your virtual physical location, and representation for your brand all in one place. Your website, and these are the two pieces that get left out sometimes. Your website also is data collection and insight tool. So a lot of reporting can come from your website, whether it's something basic like an analytics tool, and you can see how many people came to your site and from what general geographical area, or something through to a connection to a CRM or a constituent relationship management tool where you can actually track individuals that have come to your site and the different actions that they've taken and the different conversion points in which they've come through to your organization. So, what that looks like can really vary, but that piece can be super important and, like I said, is often forgotten. The other piece is accessibility and inclusivity. So while there are barriers to getting to a physical location, the hopes is that we have much more opportunity online to be able to provide an accessible and inclusive experience for people so that anyone who wants to can engage with your organization. So, what makes, we know why nonprofit websites are important, but what makes a great website? And this is coming from the perspective of our team who has built hundreds, if not thousands, of nonprofit websites. Benefit of working in the sectors, we're able to see the commonalities between different organizations and what really goes into, and we feel like we can confidently speak to what goes into building a great site for a nonprofit specifically. And the first thing, and the thing that I will talk about the most in any website project that we work on, is scalability and flexibility. Just like your organization, you want your website to be able to grow at and pivot based on the current needs. So you don't know what your organization is going to look like in 5 years, but you have goals for that. Same thing for your website. You don't want something that next year you're just going to have to start over, and the following year you're going to have to start over again. You really want to keep scalability and flexibility in mind, whether it be choosing technology or how you're writing your content or how you're structuring your site. It's always good to keep that in the forefront of your mind as you're making decisions for a website. The next piece is user experience. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth about who those users are of your website as we move through the presentation, but user experience is the other thing to always keep top of mind. How easy is it for your user to get to your site? So things like search engine optimization, marketing, advertising. How easy is it for them to land there? And then once they get there, how easy is it for them to navigate to the content that they are most interested in and the conversion points or opportunities for engagement that you want to lead them to? And then finally, integration opportunities. So this aligns a little bit with what I was speaking to as far as reporting and data collection from your website, but also for automation and AI integration for opportunities for your website. you want to make sure that you are developing and crafting a site that is going to work with as many tools in your existing or future tech stack as possible. So the website does not have to live on an island by itself and just be a marketing tool. Your website can connect for sales, it can connect for maybe constituent support, things like that with other tools. And that's something to keep in mind as you're making decisions as well. What we're going to talk through, and the focus of our presentation today, is growth-driven design, or the growth-driven methodology for website design, and how that specifically applies for nonprofit websites. This is the methodology that we work through for all of the sites that we build and that we find to be the most successful and the most efficient and affordable as well. So when we talk about, first, we're going to talk about what's wrong with the normal way. And you might be saying, well, what is the normal way? And I think some of these things will sound pretty familiar to a lot of you if you've gone through this before. Traditional website design, where you're trying to plan for everything that may happen with one-time access to a developer, one-time access to a designer, and really trying to just plan everything all up front in an initial project and then never revisit it again, you can find that that can be really difficult to plan. That's how traditional website design works. Build it, make it look great, and then set it and forget it. And we really don't find that to be successful or to be the best approach for nonprofits and for keeping your website relevant. So doing it that way can be difficult to plan. It can be pretty expensive and lead to really long timelines, which kind of go hand in hand. Um, you will you could run into unexpected issues. And a lot of times, what we find, especially with organizations, we find that the timelines end up getting long because they're trying to plan for things that don't exist yet. So instead of focusing on building something that can grow, we're focusing on what you might grow into, which can get very costly. And then also limited updates post-launch. So again, it's kind of a set it and forget it methodology, and that doesn't necessarily work well for staying relevant with your audience. Okay, so when we look at this visual here, this is growth-driven design versus traditional website design. So just a visual of what we just talked through, and looking at more of a traditional web design is kind of a stepped approach, right? So you do it once, and then 2 years later, you go ahead and you do it again. And then when technology changes, when your organization changes, you start all over. Whereas growth-driven design is our orange line, and just kind of showing that you can move more quickly and you can move in a gradual pattern rather than having to start over each time. Great. So this is what growth-driven design looks like as a whole process. So it is the important part here is you can see how it is iterative, which is different from the visual that we just viewed of traditional website design. So we'll start here on the left-hand side in strategy. So this is strategy and planning, but our strategy and planning phase for growth-driven design is very, very different than what I outlined for traditional website design, where you're trying to plan for every eventuality. In our strategy phase, we're really focused on a flexible and scalable mindset and making sure that what we're building may work for some of your ideas in the future, but also could work if that changes. So really getting to understand that your current goals and current needs for your website are super important for the strategy phase, which leads directly to creating and launching a Launchpad website. And the term Launchpad website, I don't love, because I think it kind of makes it sound like it's a quick and easy solution, and it doesn't have to be that way. A Launchpad website can have a lot of functionality. It can be integrated with a lot of different systems. It doesn't have to be simple just because we're calling it Launchpad website. But what it's really referring to is creating something that is meeting your current needs and solving for your current pain points rather than trying to plan and build out functionality that doesn't currently exist, or it doesn't currently need to exist. So not having anything unnecessary or that requires additional planning or changes within your organization. And then we move into this iterative process, which is continuous improvement. And this is what makes growth-driven design so much different than everything else, is that once that Launchpad site is up and running, it's not over. This doesn't stop. You constantly are engaging and revisiting your website and making additions and improvements to it. So to add a new page, to add a new content type, a new section, a new functionality, if the site is built properly and with the right growth mindset, you don't have to start over every time you want to do that. You should have design systems. You should have a clean and proper development so that those things can be done efficiently. So that continuous improvement piece requires a solid foundation, but it should never stop. You should never stop planning and implementing new things on your site. So pieces of what that might look like would be planning, which is kind of like a mini strategy phase, right? To solve for one new thing that may have popped up or one new change in your organization or pain point of your target audience. You develop, which is building out the functionality, and then we learn from that change. So how did that affect our analytics? How did that affect conversions? How did it affect the number of donations that came through on our site or the number of volunteers, the number of people who registered for an event? Learn from that data, and then do a transfer of that data back to the site to continue to optimize. And if it's small tweaks, go ahead and make them. If it's a big thing, go back to planning and continue to iterate on that aspect of your site and others as you go. So this is a living, breathing thing, and your site should continue to grow as you do. And I went a little bit into each phase a little prematurely, and sorry about that. But we'll talk a little bit more about the key pieces of each phase here. So, in strategy, some of the things that you might see to make this a little bit more tangible and something that you could actually work through. In the strategy phase, we want to do a target audience analysis. One of the biggest pain points we see for nonprofits, like I mentioned earlier, is the diverse audiences that they serve. So your supporters and your maybe you have participants or maybe you have volunteers or maybe you have people that are constituents in another way, but those may really vary. You're not always going to have the same profile of a user in the same way that a product or even a business would. So, we want to make sure that we're understanding those target audiences as a very first step. Second, we want to understand our goals as it pertains to those target audiences when they're on our website. So, is it that donors should, very easy example, that donors should make a donation, volunteers should sign up to be a volunteer, people who are applying for maybe support from your organization should submit an application, someone who wants to participate in a program should do so, right? So understand that, write it down. Just sometimes thinking through it really helps rather than just jumping right into building and creating. We also like to work through a content audit, which I have an example of here. We use a tool called Airtable to help with this, but you can really do it with any spreadsheet tool, or really, depending on the size of your site, you could really just you could do it in a document, you could even do it on paper. But the general idea here is that you want to pull a list of all of the pages that exist on your current website. Search engine crawler tools are helpful for this, especially if you have a larger site, because you can make sure that you catch all of those pages, not just those that are kind of obvious or on your menu. And then pull them into some sort of format where you can analyze each of them and make a call on how that content should transfer to your new site. Is it old and outdated and you just want to get rid of it completely? That we call delete. If there's something that needs to be maybe the details need to be refined, or there's parts of it that you don't like, but you want to keep that general idea, and you want to keep that page, we mark that as update. And then keep would be this is exactly perfect as it is, copy and paste. And as you can imagine, those are normally the minority, but I'm sure there are things that are focus areas for your website that you do want to just move over exactly as is. Things like terms and conditions or privacy policy that you've already worked through and have, prepared to migrate as is. This really helps you prepare for building a new site because it gives you an understanding of what is needed, again, for this Launchpad site. What is needed right now to be built, and what patterns can we identify? And looking at this in a list to figure out if there are things that we might want to grow into or expand in the future. The other thing you want to look at in strategy is the architecture of that site. So once you have that list figured out of what pages or content exist on your news site, you want to figure out how should we organize this so that our target audiences can find what they need. And depending on how many audiences you have and how many unique different conversion points or places that you're trying to send those target audiences, you may or may not center this site architecture around your audiences. Something that we recommend is everyone's brain works a little bit different when it comes to this stuff, right? Like, where would I logically look? Where would I logically hover to find the mission page? Where would I logically go to find volunteer? That answer is probably going to be slightly different for everyone. And a lot of times, what we find when we talk to different stakeholders within organizations is that everyone has competing priorities. And if it was up to each department, their piece would be front and center, but that's not always realistic, right? So we recommend treating this as kind of an information gathering exercise. And something you can actually physically do is what's called a card sorting exercise in user experience. So you can actually write all these pages, depending how many you have, but you write all these pages down on note cards and have different stakeholders from within your organization. And even if you have target audience members that are closely associated that you can have participate in this, have them organize your pages in a way that they think would make sense on a menu. Take a picture of it after each person completes that exercise and then compare them at the end and get an idea of how what are the commonalities? How does everyone think things should be arranged, and make some decisions based on that. Phase two, as we mentioned, is the Launchpad website. So this is where technology and design come into play. So choosing a content management system, figuring out what your ideal user experience should look like is typically very aligned with the design process for your site. And then building out your initial integrations or the ones that are key to keep your organization functioning as is. So this would be integrations with your current tech stack. When it comes to content management systems, these are just some of the options. I like to give you a visual of what we mean when we say CMS, but this is the essentially house for all of your content and for your website, the vehicle that allows it to be published. Wix and Squarespace are managed CMS. So that means that a lot of times these are like drag and drop experiences for beginners. They allow hosting and all of the different technical needs that you might have to be in one place. Great options if you're just starting out. And then you move into open source CMS, which allows for more customization and integration. So things like WordPress, which is the most popular content management system globally, and our content management system of choice. But there's also things like Drupal and Joomla. When we're looking at user experience, we're going to revisit that target audience conversation from the strategy phase. So this is the time to really build out your target audience personas. And if you're not familiar with a persona is building almost not almost, actually, a fictional representation of your ideal target audience members. So if there is, you kind of want to take a sample of the target audiences that you're going after and that you would like to go after, and build out personas or profiles so that everyone in your organization is on the same page about who it is that you're trying to reach. If you say we want volunteers, that might look like someone different to every person in your organization. So the person who writes the social media posts and the person who's actually at an event recruiting volunteers and the person who manages your website are all writing different messaging, thinking they're getting a different person to be a volunteer. If you work through a persona exercise, everyone's on the same page about who that is, how to speak to them, what is important to that persona. And it really helps align all of your messaging across your channels and especially your website. You want to think about the user journey for that persona and what it looks like for them to get to the goal that you have for them on their website. And is it clear and an easy path for them? You want to think about mobile and device responsiveness. So is your website showing up on any device that a user may be using? Are you looking at the data to figure out what devices those commonly are so that you can design for those things first? Want to look at accessibility, making sure that your website is accessible for those who may have visual impairments or other requirements, and that screen readers, technology like that assist people in accessing websites can be used on your site. And then again, integration and automation opportunities that come along with either your current tech stack or something that you'd like to do in the future. We talk about mobile optimization or responsiveness. We want to make sure that on any device, your site is performing at an acceptable speed. Pages are loading quickly, images are loading quickly. We want to make sure the sizing and the design and the layout work well on every device. We want to make sure that you're able to track activity and engagement on, and people are able to participate at the same level on every device. Talking a little bit about accessibility, just because that is a common challenge we run into. Some of the common accessibility challenges include lack of alt text. So this is a description of the images that exist on the back end of your website. Screen readers, page readers, they can't read images just like search engines can. And what you want to do is make sure that each image has that alt text so that a screen reader can actually say out loud or explain what an image is. Same thing if the image didn't load, or same thing if a search engine is crawling your site. It wants to be able to understand the image rather than view it. Contrast is a huge issue and something to think about, especially when you're making decisions around your branding and color palette, even before you're designing your website. Do the colors in your brand guidelines, in your color palette for your brand, do they work together? Can you layer one on top of another with significant contrast so that it's easy to read? There are contrast checkers like WebAIM that allow you to do this and check it on your own. I highly suggest checking that out using that free tool. Unclear navigation, non-responsive design, things that we've talked about for general user experience also have a big impact on accessibility. Excuse me. Um, Access to multimedia, so things like videos or the number of PDFs, things like that, that could be displaying on your website. And then text size and formatting options as well, just making sure that things are displaying clearly. Again, a lot of this stuff overlaps with best practice for user experience and also benefits the accessibility level of your website. And then finally, expanding a little bit on the integration and automation opportunities. I mentioned earlier constituent relationship management. So this would be a CRM tool that collects contact information and your touch points with those contacts. This could be something, it could be donors, it could be volunteers, it could be prospects, it could be people who are participating in your programs, but just tracking your organization's touch points with various contacts would be done through a CRM tool. CRM tools or separate tools can also manage marketing automation. It's great when they're tied together. Automation can be done based on the properties of a contact, actions that they take on your site, engagement that they have with your organization. And then donations and fundraising as well. So just considering any sort of payment processing or financial transaction that needs to happen on your site and making sure that the technology you've chosen for your site integrates well with any technology that's required for that piece. And then a little bit more about continuous improvement, that iterative phase of growth-driven design. So once your new site is up and running, everything is functioning as expected and as needed for the current health of your website and organization, then we start working on continuous improvement. And it's important to prioritize this and make sure that things don't become a pressing pain point before you revisit this, that you're just constantly putting time into iterating and evolving your website based on data, based on feedback, based on changes to your organization or the website's needs as well. So what you can do as part of continuous improvement is you can evaluate based on those goals you wrote down originally, look at your analytics, take some feedback and see how well things are performing. You can learn about your users based on that information, and then you can plan updates based on what you learn. We want to make sure a big piece of continuous improvement is making sure that the updates and changes that you're making to your site are done with a goal in mind or based on some data or performance. Maybe it's an increase in performance or a decrease in performance of certain aspects of your site that you want to change. All right, so now we're to the fun part, and Jason is going to join me.
Great.
We're going to work through a hands-on workshop that helps you put together a website improvement plan for your site. We're going to primarily focus on your homepage just for the sake of time and working through this exercise. But the same process can be applied to other key pages on your site to help you put together a plan for improving your site overall. So essentially, relating this back to the growth-driven design methodology, we're going to help you work through continuous improvement. And we're hoping that as a result of this, when we answer that question in the beginning, are you looking to redesign? Are you looking to improve? Hopefully, working through this will help give you a good idea of, do you have what you need and you can make some improvements, or maybe do you need to start over because your goals have shifted drastically from your initial iteration of your site. So what you'll need to work through this, we recommend if you can open your homepage in a browser or another tab if you have Zoom open in a browser. Um, you'll want maybe like a notepad somewhere to take notes or a Google Doc on your computer. And then if you have your website analytics, I don't know that you'll have enough time to go thoroughly through those right now, but if you're familiar with general trends or how Google Analytics is kind of trending on your site, then I suggest taking a look at it.
All right, so let's kind of jump in here. I think the reason we like focusing on homepages is just because they're so important. When someone hears about your nonprofit, or they become curious, they go to their phone, they type into Google and they pull it up, you have roughly like 10 seconds to really capture their attention. And I think that's really important to think of. And so when we discuss about defining who your website's for, we really want you to define who is that target audience up front and really lock that down so that it is hyper relevant to them. Yes, we understand you're going to have multiple audience types from participants to supporters, or as I call them, partners. And so you just want to make sure that that relevance is easy to understand up front. And then they can, once you earn let's say earn the right to tell them more, then they can opt to learn more in what they're interested in. Because donors, they don't have time, but they might have money. Volunteers don't have money, but they have time. Participants maybe don't have anything and are just looking for a way out. So what are those services or benefits you provide? I call them your dreams or aspirations. And how is it easy to understand what you're going for? So for this first part, we want you to really identify who is the most important visitor. I mean, not that we want to say you're not going to speak to the others, but because that'll help kind of set the tone for the website. And then how are we going to really build that out? So, what is their biggest need? What is that biggest aching thing? And so remember, they're on their phone. They're going to give you 8 to 10 seconds when they look at it. Why? Because they might be crossing the street while holding their kid's hand. They might be driving their car while they're on their phone. They might be working while watching this webinar, and putzing around on their phone. But that's the idea and why it's so important to be hyper relevant. Because if you're not, they're just going to click the X. And so, yeah, take some time, write that down, and we can move on from there. Anything to add, Melissa?
No, I don't think so. This aligns closely with what we talked about for identifying your target audience and building out those personas. I think that's a nice next step after you work through this is to go back and, if you haven't already, build out full personas, especially for your number one kind of most important visitor. Figure out, and when I say persona, things that make sense there would be, we go as far sometimes to name them so that we can refer to them internally and make it kind of feel like a real person that everyone can relate to. So whether it's a silly name or something that actually aligns with the persona, name them, give them, demographics. Where do they live? How old are they? What's their education level? Write a story where, what's their background? What motivates them? Something else that's helpful to really humanize the personas is putting together like motivational, not motivational, just regular quotes, like quotes. What is a quote this person might say, whether it be a common quote or others. But oh yes, and someone said in the chat, choosing images for the personas as well. Definitely a huge help. And then sharing that with everyone in your organization. So again, you're all on the same page about who it is that you're speaking to.
And imagery, I think imagery is really the unsung hero here. We've done multiple webinars where we talk about accessibility and doing like alternate text for images. And sometimes when people just they want to get a website up there, they want to throw some images up, but when you start working on the alternate text, it can really help you hone in on does this image send the right message? Because all of a sudden you're trying to put words to an image, which is what your brain initially thinks of. And so I think just going through even that, going through your website and looking at your pictures and saying, is this sending the right message? Is this selling that dream or aspiration that, every one of your founders agreed upon when they created it, or every one of your biggest supporters absolutely, believes, within their heart. That's what that imagery needs to sell, not something random, not something, it needs to be that's relevant to you because people are taking this in as an entirety, not just one or the other. It's a little bit more.
Sorry, Jason, you broke up a little bit. I can't tell if that was my computer or
Oh,
yours, but
I think it might be on my side. Sorry.
oh no, that's okay. And so yeah, if you can, as a conclusion to this, write down the biggest need for this visitor of your website and what action you want them to take, and then you want to focus your site around those pieces. Next piece of this, we want to take a look at our homepage and set the number one goal for your site. So what we want to look at here, and we say number one goal, but it doesn't necessarily have to be one thing. You're not, no, I don't think anyone's going to be able to narrow this down to one thing. But the point we want to make here is that it's important to not only write down your goals, but also prioritize them. So we've put in some examples here of common goals that we see for organizations, but yours are going to be unique to you. And the more specific you can be here, the better. It'll help you revisit those later as part of that continuous improvement piece. But if you want to take a look, take a few minutes to write down what success would look like for your website based on the most important goals that you have. And the more specific that you can be, like the example here, where a donor sees statistics and that helps show the impact of your organization and that kind of pushes them to donate, the more specific you can be, the better. Anything to add, Jason?
No, I think you're right. And it's a less is more on a lot of this. Remember, you're trying to be clear, concise, and ultimately consumable. So don't try to do plays on words. Don't try to be fancy with things because, again, it's fast. People don't have a lot of time. You're probably not getting all their attention. So just make sure it's very clear and articulate what you provide and how it can help them.
Great. Give everyone a little bit to write that down.
And a lot of this that we're talking about today, because I look at the website's really a messaging vehicle. It's not your message. So half of it's the messaging vehicle. Is it easy to access? Is it easy to use? Is the messaging positioned right? But messaging is really the other half. It's what is the message that you would tell me if you met me in person at Starbucks about your nonprofit? What's the hook? What would you say to try to entice me or create curiosity? All that messaging should ladder up to the same thing that your website says. Because the idea is when you create that curiosity or someone becomes aware of you, that's their first inclination is look you up to say, are you valid? Do you exist? You know, and then what are those next steps? Is this something they're interested in getting started and doing more? Or is it just click the X, oh, that was neat, and on to the next thing?
Yeah. So the next piece we're going to look at is now that you've taken a look at your homepage and assessed your goals and the target audiences that you're reaching, based on what's there now, what needs to improve. So take a look at what you think might be working to meet those goals and reach that target audience. And also what might not be. To Jason's earlier point, what maybe there's an image that's not speaking to your audience. Maybe there's some text that's confusing or something that used to make sense and doesn't anymore. Take a few minutes and take a look at your specific homepage. Our goal for you would be to list two things that you're doing well, what's working, two things that are clear and effective as part of your homepage. And then what are two things that might be confusing, might be maybe like absent from your homepage entirely, or might be difficult to navigate or cluttered design-wise. That's a lot, so we'll just give you a minute to
I'd say
work through
feel free
that.
to throw questions in chat if you have questions on this, because yes, we realize we're giving you a lot to take in. Think of yourselves as kind of the guide, and the people that are coming to visit your site, you want to kind of enable them to be the hero of their own story. So if I've always wanted to give back to my local community, but I work too long and the time I have is spent with my kids, maybe when I come to a site that meets, one of my dreams or aspirations, I'll donate some money, but it has to be relevant. Is this something that's going to help local kids? Is it going to do, or what is that connection, that connective tissue for me that gets me to say yes?
Great. All right, so next step for your homepage for the purposes of this exercise, and again, you can do this for any of the pages or like, I wouldn't do it for every page, but the key pieces of your site, the most important pieces of your site, you want to map out your structure. And we'll talk a little bit about the ideal formula that we follow. And we find that most organizations can, in some way or shape, follow this format. And this is kind of the formula that we see for success. So, a good homepage should start off with a headline. And we're talking, it's a little difficult to talk through this without an example in front of us, but when we say a homepage should start off with, we're skipping the header of the site. We're skipping navigation, we're skipping where the search bar is, we're skipping where your logo is. Move down onto the actual content of the homepage. So when we're talking about a headline, you really want to introduce that page, I mean, in the same way you would with any writing or any document, anything you'd put together. A headline needs to grab the attention of your visitors. Think about someone who is unfamiliar with your brand. Think about that target audience that you outlined. Tell them who your organization is so they know, like, kind of orient themselves to the page that they're on. Where am I? Why am I here? Like, keep me focused. The next thing you want to follow up with, and you want to do this throughout the page, are include calls to action. Your homepage is the preview window into the rest of your site, and you want to make sure that you are driving people to those other pieces of your site. Your homepage is not just a landing page where someone views that page and leaves. The idea is that they would find the information that they're looking for and go deeper into your site. So calls to action are what help us do that. Read more, learn more, donate now, sign up, view our events, things like that are really going to drive people to further sections of your website. This key call to action that's at the top should be a high priority call to action when you looked at that and said, who's your number one target audience and what's your number one goal for them? That is what should align with your call to action. And then all the others should be in other places on the site. You want to add something, Jason?
Yeah, I was going to say, so, and call to actions, they don't always have to drive to other things on the site. Remember, the site, your website in this case, is the medium in which you're able to access and speak to your target audience. So sometimes these call to actions could be something in person, coming to an event. They could be something like that. The whole goal is that we've taken these target audience or these your prospects from an awareness state through the consideration phase, which is the hardest part, where it's all about your relevance and ultimately into activation or adoption. How can they get started? Where can they, play a role? Is it just signing up for a newsletter because they're not quite sure? Is it coming to an event, signing up for an event? Is it, donating or signing up to volunteer? But people aren't going to come to your website, look at it in 10 seconds and just donate. It doesn't happen. That donation has to be earned. So how are you getting those other touch points with these people to ensure that they can ultimately evolve into a volunteer, evolve into a donor, or even one of your evangelists that'll help support your brand and grow your nonprofit as a whole?
Great. Next piece on the page would be your impact or program. So you may have both actually. In a lot of cases, you're going to have both. So impact, this would be like, this works really well when it looks like statistics or impact numbers that can be tangible things that people can see. Programs, if that's relevant for your organization, this is an opportunity to give a high level overview of what you offer as an organization. Testimonials and social proof kind of align with impact, but they're more people focused. So impact would maybe be a little bit more statistics or numbers, visual, like charts, whereas testimonial or social proof would be features in a news article, a press release, quotes from people that you have worked with or people that support the organization. Conversion point is helpful for a homepage. So a newsletter sign up or view your blog, something that's going to drive someone to ongoing engage with your organization, not just this one visit. And then information about further contact and your social media. So again, to that same point, have them engage with you long term, not just in this single visit to the site. So, based on that key structure and something that's not listed here that might go in with blogs would be a list of your events, if that's relevant for your organization as well. Um, Based on that structure, take a look at your homepage and see what you think might be missing or need to be redesigned on your site.
And another point Melissa made to touch on is because some of these people said that they felt like they were in a decent place, but that they might have room for improvement. Is if you feel like the website does have a decent flow, it does say this message pretty well. Of course, everything can be tweaked for optimization, but if it feels good, then start looking through and go, do I have the ability to track engagement? Am I able to tell where people come from to hit my website? Am I able to tell when they click on certain buttons? So you can actually track each successive conversion because you might have people getting right to that point where they're about to volunteer and then they leave the page and it might tell you, hey, maybe we should look at the messaging here. Maybe we should give them a different option because then you can slowly improve. But if you can't track it, how do you know where you're losing them?
Yeah, great point.
Oh, I guess I skipped it.
So like Jason said, you want to make sure that you're measuring this. So not only do you want to make sure that the mechanisms are in place, like Jason was mentioning, to track those things, but it's important, just like we wrote down our goals, we want to write down what it is that we want to track. And we talked about making those goals tangible. These are the metrics that can help with that. So we might say, we don't like our website. We want a new one. We want more people to come to it. But how many more people? What's realistic? What's a realistic increase? And what does that look like over time? Or you may say, people aren't really engaging with our site because it maybe isn't mobile responsive and a lot of people are coming from mobile. Okay, well, what's a metric that defines that? Is it number of pages per session? Is it time spent on a specific page? Is it conversions per session? Things like that. So this takes a little bit of research to figure out what the metrics are and how you might be able to track them, but define which ones are most important for you. You can get lost in the data if you don't. So it's very important to keep this real and keep this attainable. All right, so we are going to randomly select a few home pages to take a look at, and we would love to chat with you about your thoughts on your homepage as part of this exercise and then provide our feedback as well. If anyone is interested in participating with us, if you can please drop your website URL in the chat, we will randomly select and we will unmute you so that you can participate. I'll give you guys a few minutes to drop them in there. Okay. And I am going to stop sharing my screen so I can reshare the right window. All right, let's look at Tracy. You shared burbankpride.org, and I have that open. Aretha, if you don't mind unmuting Tracy.
Sure thing.
Thank you so much. All right, Tracy, we are taking a look at your site here. Do you want to share any of the feedback that you collected from that exercise or any thoughts you have on your homepage?
Can you hear us, Tracy?
Tracy, you can unmute yourself if you're muted.
Hello?
There
We
you
can hear
are.
you now. There you go.
I lost connection and I signed back in, so I missed that piece. But I'm very nervous about you guys taking a look. But we're redoing the front page now because that event's over and we just got our date for a new event this year.
Great.
So it's
Awesome.
anything to help, obviously.
Is your just a quick question for you. So is your organization primarily focused around a single event, or it was that just the biggest thing happening at the time?
That's the biggest thing happening at the time.
Okay,
So
great.
we do a family pride event versus like the regular pride events that are happening now in June. Um,
Uh-huh.
it's too hard to compete for a weekend and then get people to show up. So we base ours because Burbank's more family based. So we try to make it a more inclusive pride instead of
Okay.
focused on like that uh, the 21-year-old crowd that likes to go half naked. So we really try to help out teens and we get a lot of resources there so that they have places to go and suicide prevention. And last year we had 4,000 people, so it was really awesome.
Awesome.
So we do fundraisers throughout the year, and we provide resources and services. But we have our one big event, um, in September now.
Nice. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that background. I think it's awesome that your information is front and center. Your logo is very visible and your brand is very consistent throughout your homepage. I think something that stood out from your description there is you've got a really great grasp on your target audience. You know who you're trying to reach, and that was the first thing that you were able to kind of explain through to us, which is not always that easy of a thing to do. So that is a great that's a great advantage that you have, and I think you have an opportunity to make that even more known on your site. You
Okay.
can see, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I said, oh yeah, great.
Yeah, you do. And you do a little bit of that here because I think the audience in this picture is very similar to what you described, but I'm sure you have some really cool pictures from your event and things like that. I think it would be great to be able to bring pictures of real people through to your site and be able to have those as kind of a focal point to just without words even just explain, who your target audience is.
Yeah.
Some other pieces that could be helpful from an accessibility and user experience perspective is with a lot of the colors going on, it's difficult to find like the embedded video here because things are kind of layered over each other. So
Yeah.
there in a redesign, there's a way, there would be ways to incorporate those images and still keep your branding and keep your colors super consistent and keep the page unique, but make those elements a little bit more clear and give them a little bit more breathing room so that regardless of the device, it would be easy to find the various elements of the page.
Okay.
And then the other piece I would recommend, I love the contact us. I love the calls to action here. The donation call to actions, big at the top and big at the bottom. I would just say anything that you can do to answer that first question that I asked is your organization based around this one event, or is it more than that and this is just a focal point? I think you can make that clear structurally on the homepage with some of those formatting ideas that we went through. So you could have a headline that's about Burbank Pride, and then you could just secondarily have, or even in times like rotate through when you're promoting your specific event. But just making it clear the answer to that question, I think you could really easily do visually and with a few like headlines and key phrases.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Thank you for participating and sharing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will go ahead and pick another one. Let's look at um, sorry, I'm having a hard time copying these out of the chat. Here we go. Katie shared the blackbeltfound.org. Hi,
Hey,
Katie.
how are y'all?
Doing well. Thanks so much for sharing your site.
Absolutely. So yeah, we definitely have some work to do. this is something that I've kind of inherited for the last year or two and trying to work on making it better. But definitely from the first questions you asked, I think we're missing on that homepage, we're definitely missing kind of that headline about like what is it? Um, so kind of thinking through how we can incorporate that. And then I'd like to see a lot more like we have a tab for programs up there. But I think we could kind of show programs more because we have quite a lot of them. So I don't know if somewhere to incorporate that in the homepage might be more effective. And
Yeah,
I guess my other question, and you might have mentioned this, but I'd love to know like what platform folks are using to actually edit their website. Because this is on WordPress, and I'm wondering if that's a common thing or if there's something better out there that would
sure.
be more effective for us because it's a bit
Yeah.
clunky to update, and so that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, great question. So, two things. So the piece when you mentioned your programs, I just want to suggest something that could be kind of a quick solution there. What generally works well, we work with a lot of organizations that have a lot of programs, and what they have a hard time with is one, keeping those programs up to date, keeping them
Hmm.
organized, and making it easy for someone to come to the site. And they might have like drastically different target audiences that are looking for different programs. We want to make
Yep.
it easy to get to the group of programs that's relevant for you. So adding some layer of like category or taxonomy on top of your programs that allows people to get to programs by type
That too.
oftentimes makes one helps explain what your organization does, right? So if you think about like these are our goals for our programs, those should be kind of your program types. Put those on your homepage and then click through to more like mini landing pages of each one. So programs that do X, go here. Programs that do Y, go here. And that should help kind of align your target audience and send them through to the right section of the site.
Yes, because what you just hit on was also I had a trouble saying like who our site is for exactly because I think we have different audiences for different things. We want people to
Mhm.
know about our events, but then we also want, donors and sponsors to come and see what we're doing. So that would be great. Like you said, by type. So like education programs, children's programs, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And that would be a great piece. Like you've got a really strong headline here, you've got a strong nav menu. These calls to action are great. Like a great piece to put even just right in here would be our services or the
Gotcha.
programs we offer and set it up like that would be great.
See,
Perfect.
Melissa, I feel like they have a big, I'm looking at it on my phone too, so I'm looking on the side.
Yeah,
Like when I go to the phone,
it's a little
this
rough.
the website setup, well, there's opportunity for improvement. There
There you
always
go.
so it's very easy for me to see some of the ways I can get involved, but I don't understand the immediate relevance. I don't understand the why.
Gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
so kind of the framework I always use when I look at websites is what do you do? Why should I care? And how do I get involved? And the I think of it as from the eyes of your persona or someone that doesn't really know much about you at all. Not someone
Yep.
that's been a founder, not someone that's been there forever. You have intimate knowledge that we will never have. So,
Yep.
because I'm like, all right, well, black belt found, is this black belt karate? Is this black belt? My mind just goes on.
Yep.
And
Yep. We get that a
so
lot.
remember, that's the normal. So
Yep.
relevant, upfront. And a lot of times in the web pages we produce, even if you run like a scrolling image in the background or something like that, we'll have static text that sits out on top of it so that people
Gotcha.
quickly understand what is that mission or what is your relevance, regardless of what moves behind it.
Yeah. And
Perfect.
Katie, you asked about platforms. So we work within WordPress, that because it is the most commonly used content management system and has a ton of integration opportunities and customization opportunities. We recommend using a like page builder tool kind of layered on top of WordPress. We recommend Elementor, but there's many out there. But that allows you to have that kind of drag and drop experience of something like Wix or Squarespace, but within the WordPress environment. So you're allowing your team who may not be developers or designers to utilize some pre-existing tools and drag and drop functionality, but you're not limiting yourself so that if you did work with a developer for something a little bit more complex, you'd have the ability to do that.
Okay, that's
It's
great to know.
important to
We
note.
actually are using that Elementor piece, so I at least kind
Great.
of feel like we're on the right path. We just need to kind of, I think our theme we need to update in that
Yeah,
terms. But yeah, this is
great.
very helpful. So I really appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, Katie.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
And Jason, I'll pass it over to you if you want to wrap up. We're almost at time, so if you want to wrap it up with a quick
Sure.
overview of our services, that would be great.
I'd say quickly, yes. So appreciate everyone coming to join us. Melissa, if you want to scroll through those real fast for us. Oh, I guess, yep. So we do offer monthly services for those that are not looking for just DIY. They're looking for help. Yes, you understand what needs to be done, but you don't know where to start. You don't have the ability, either the time or the expertise to do it. We offer both monthly services, which is here, the upgrade and premium. These are great ways to get started with us without having any long-term contract where we can get it in, get involved, and help guide you. And we also offer one-off projects like full website redesigns. Happy to engage. I know Melissa and Zach, my colleague, put a meeting link in for my meeting there. So if you guys want to engage and discuss these, I'd be happy to review them. But the big piece here is there's also other options if you're looking for the DIY end. Make sure you check out that Wix piece there's a great discount on TechSoup's website as well. That is, so if you're really in that crawl approach where you're just getting started, very inexpensive and a great way to get started on a budget. And then just keep this recording at hand and try to utilize the information we're giving you to build those first pages out.
Great. Thanks everyone so much for your time.